To all that be in Rome, I am ready to preach the gospel. To you that are at Rome, to all that be in Rome, I am ready to preach the gospel. To you that are at Rome, grace to you and peace from God our Father and the Lord Jesus Christ. You and peace.
And welcome back, everybody, to Fehr The Burn. My name is Cougar, and I am so excited to be back, y'all. It's so awesome. I have a lot of stuff that I want to talk about, and we are going to get to it all in a coherent, timely manner. First, just want to let y'all know we got a lot of content coming up. This is going to be a 2 to 3 episode series called The Formation of the Bible. We're going to talk all things of how the Bible formed, and Chandler's going to be coming out with some of his own stuff, and we're going to be doing a lot more pods together as we go forward. And so, all excited. This is the road to 100 episodes. We're going to try to hit 100 episodes, and it'll be a huge accomplishment if we can hit that. So, without further ado, let's dive right in. So, the formation of the Bible. We just want to know how the Bible came to be. And pretty much we just need to identify the most credible documents regarding Jesus Christ and his resurrection, if that's the topic at hand, which it is. And so we're going to talk about this, and as you can see, there's a little spoiler alert down there. We're going to do the Council of Coburn. And in episode 3, we're actually going to choose our books. We're going to make our Bible based upon what we see as we go through all of this information together. So stick with me here, but essentially with everyone wants the most credible documents. No one wants a non-credible document. So with our credible documents, we would need to find who wrote them, when were they written, and how do we know? How do we know these things that we're about to claim? That is what we are about to get into. So let's do it. The Council of Coburn. So first off, we got to find some common ground, okay? And that common ground is going to be found in the conversation of written content. I know it's so basic, but we just got to start somewhere and just slowly step. So if there was nothing written about Jesus, there would be no conversation to have. Done. Beautiful. So we all agree. There's got to be some type of written something somewhere that we can contend with. But even if something's written, that doesn't just mean everything. There's still more nuance to even something that's written. But at the very least, we are looking for something that has been written down, right? Beautiful. Okay, so step 1 of common ground. Now, step 2. Pretty much everyone wants to find a line straight back to the apostles 2,000 years ago. No one is like, no, give me a writing 400 years after Jesus. That's going to give you a better testimony of who he was. Maybe Muslims, but we won't get too far into that conversation. But everyone wants to find that line straight back to the apostles, the original teachings, the original writings, whatever it is, to find that authority. That's what everybody wants. But really, in all honesty, written content is the only way to achieve this stuff for thousands of years. There's no other way to do it. Videos don't do it. Pictures don't do it. And they didn't even exist back then. So now that we have this common ground, we understand how valuable written content is, we got some questions to ask. If there's written content, what is it? What's the name? When was the content written? Who wrote the content? How many manuscripts does the content have, and how many historical witnesses does it have? But what do these prove? Do these prove anything? We are going to come right back to these in terms of, do they prove anything? What do they prove? Is it even that relevant if you have historical witnesses? We'll get to that. But I want to ask another question is, what makes a document relevant in terms of this conversation of Jesus Christ and his resurrection? Well, wouldn't we all agree? Was it need to be written by someone affiliated with Jesus? It would need to be written by someone who was around during the time of Jesus. It couldn't be somebody who, again, Muhammad, I'm picking on the Muslims all of a sudden here, 800 years after the fact. Well, he wasn't affiliated with Jesus, and so he won't be able to give us the best testimony of who he is, because we would want the documents that are the closest to Jesus. Perfect. I think most people would agree with that. And then if there's any writings, does any contemporary history back up the writings? And does any manuscripts back up the writings as well? And that's what we need to address here. So before we get into what do these prove, we need to continue on with our questions here, and we need to ask we need to ask the good initial questions. I put good because I'm trying to be loving, and I'm not trying to hate too much, but the skeptical questions that aren't necessarily all the way fully thought through because they come from a place of really ignorance is what it is. If someone says these documents were forged to gain control over the masses, is that true? Well, we're going to find out that's not true. People say we don't actually know who wrote the documents. We don't know who it was. We don't know when the documents were written. We don't know if the documents were later manipulated or changed. We don't have the original writings. Well, just remember, being skeptical is not evidence as we get into this. Being skeptical is not evidence. Remember these. We're going to come back to these. But as you can see that I wrote under all of these, manuscripts and historical witness answer these questions and these objections, okay? And we're going to get into that. So what do manuscripts prove? What do they prove then? What is historical witnesses? They don't actually prove anything, do they? Well, they don't necessarily prove the truth of the Bible, but what they prove is when these documents were written, how we know what was written, and who wrote it, which are very important to this whole picture. And the historical witness also tells us when it was written and what was said, partially due to quotes and allusions, and who wrote what was said, most importantly, with these guys. And I'm going to show you these examples of how powerful these two things can be if they are actually being used. So, for example, let's try the Gospel of Matthew. And let's just take a look here. The Gospel of Matthew claimed to be written by a disciple of Jesus. Well, who claimed this? 100% of contemporary historians claimed or gave attribution to Matthew. And 100% of thousands of manuscripts ranging from Greek, Latin, Coptic, etc. all attribute Matthew as the author. What are the odds of this? Do we really think that humans could conspire to accomplish this? And if we get off the humans conspiring train, could humans accidentally do this? How much credit are we going to give humans here if we think that they could accidentally do this? That'd be pretty bold here. So who wrote it? Well, if no one ever had centralized control, no one ever had centralized power over this story, and if 100% of manuscripts in many different languages spanning many regions and 100% of the historical witnesses spanning many different regions all agree, what are the odds of that? And who would we say? Would we say, well, we don't know. It could have been anybody. I mean, like, what does know mean? What does knowing something mean? That's the big question, because that is overwhelming. That is overwhelming evidence. And again, episode 2 is going to get into the specifics of the manuscripts and the specific historical witnesses. We're going to get into all of that. So I'm not just going to leave everybody with these gigantic claims. It's all coming down the pipeline. Don't you worry. But so there's the power of manuscripts and historical witness. And so then if we mesh in the date, so if we have a document that has a good date on it, so that would be the green right here, because those were the times that people were alive that could have been with Jesus. Thomas wasn't alive in 100 AD. Mary wasn't alive in 120. John wasn't alive in 120. Judas wasn't alive in 130. You see the issues with these red Gnostic ones. The green New Testament has the dates. And again, Matthew's right in here. So we have the dates, we have the historical witness, and the manuscript evidence. Well, now we're cooking with something here. So just to give a quick scope when we are talking historical witnesses, I just want to kind of emphasize this. And again, this is something we're going to go into the specifics of. Who are the 7, who are the 4, who are the 3 of the attributions here. But before 150 AD, so roughly 100 years after the Gospels were written, pretty much everything was written here. These are the quotes and allusions of different works, different books, different writers that attribute and do not argue against the authorship of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. So they're all in 100% lockstep. No one says, oh, well, actually, Bill wrote this, not Matthew. No one says that. There's no dissension at all amongst people who were being persecuted. So again, the whole like, oh, well, they were trying to do it for control does not make any sense. But again, we can go through. So to make it easy to put in your mind, there's 3 that don't have any. Philemon, Jude, and 3 John by 150 AD. 2 John and James have 1. Everything else has 2 to 6, which is just so insane. Like Matthew having 7 within 100 years of that writing existing is the most insane thing next to Jesus resurrecting and all the stuff in the Bible. In secular history, that is an insane number. And then the fact that we can get pretty much that, half of that, and a little more than half, over and over and over and over and over again is insane. So please take this into mind that, oh, it was well known immediately who wrote what, and everybody knew. That's why they were so frank about it, and that's why they all had 100% agreement on it, because they all knew. So it's just, I just wanted to point that out because it is an insane point to make. And so then bringing this all in, so we have the historical, we have the date, and then we get the manuscript evidence. Thousands. Matthew has 2,100 manuscripts. Greek, that's just the Greek, original Greek. 2,150 manuscripts all say Matthew wrote that gospel. Wow. Same with Mark. All of them will have that other than Hebrews. Hebrews will be a conversation we get into of the silly narrative that surrounds that book as well. But we'll get to that. But this is my favorite one. It's comparing, here's your New Testament. Obviously, you can see which, just by looking at this, without looking at the names, which books would you think we have the best chance of having the original writings from? You'd start to the left and you'd go to the right and you'd end at Jude. I forgot to put Revelation in this one. And it's 147, I think. But, oh yeah, right here. But then right here, there's a space right here before it kind of picks up. These guys are going to be your church fathers. So this is the pitiful, poor excuse we have for history called the Gnostic Gospels. And most of these don't even make it in the 2nd century. They're even further out. So it's like almost nothing at all, really. And I put this down here just to reemphasize the authorship accreditation on all of these are in complete lockstep. Insane. Please just understand that. So when you have the manuscripts and you have the eyewitness, a historical witness converging, that's where you start getting a very compelling argument. So as this compelling argument goes on, I want to go through a thought experiment. I want to go through a thought experiment and use tangible Fehr The Burn ideas, analogies, and content for this thought experiment. And so while, again, this conversation is not directed at Chan, how it has been before when we were pretty much speaking to each other, I'm going to use Chandler as an example here. Who wrote what the word father means? So if you go back onto our YouTube channel, there's a play that Chandler allegedly wrote, claims he wrote, but like, again, how would we know? But go check it out. It's what the word father means on Fehr The Burn. How do we know? How do we know that Chandler wrote this, especially as a third party? Can we prove that Chandler wrote this play? Let me scroll to the top here. So I want to emphasize as a third party when we go about this. So I am a second party, maybe even first party. Like I knew what the word father means was coming out before and all that. Like, so I'm going to try to treat it as a third party and we need to look at all of the evidence that would suggest that Chandler wrote what the word father means. That's our best thing. So it's pretty simple. The process. We check the title page. Oh, look at that. Chandler Fehr. That's pretty easy. Title page. Again, so think if we had 2,000 of these from all different places saying Chandler Fehr. That would be compelling. Ask where the document of the script came from. You can trace it back to Chan. Unless you find it with no context at all, you can trace it back to Chandler. And then step 3 would be to see if there's any other external resources regarding or presenting what the word father means. Videos, interviews, etc. And there's a few. If you go on our YouTube, there's that what the word father means right there. And here's a great one. Not only do we have the brochure, we have Chandler's Instagram post going along with it, taking credit for authoring this. That's great. Because again, we're trying to figure out if someone literally didn't know, how would they go about proving this? These are great. These are great starts. And here's another very compelling one. A Facebook event group. That was at Idaho State University. Event by Chandler. Come out and see the world premiere of what the word father means, written by Chandler Fehr. Well, there you go. There you go. That's pretty compelling evidence, I would say. But what would be the best evidence? What would be better than that? What would trump that? Eyewitnesses. Eyewitnesses is what would trump that. So tell me, what's more convincing? These pictures up here, this picture, they're all pictures. I don't have this brochure. I don't have this program. Well, they're all just screenshots. What's more powerful is me and Chandler bearing witness to what the word father means in one of our episodes. So it's not just that it was saying that Chandler wrote it. It was saying that before it even came out into the public, Chandler was taking credit for it. That's a great piece of evidence. And that can be proven in this episode. I can't remember what episode it is. But then let's take it out to its logical conclusion. Sorry for the fuzzy picture, but what if everybody, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 10 to 12 people stood up and said, Chandler, I witnessed Chandler come out, present this play. He came out and took credit for it. He came out at the end and took credit for it. He wrote it. I know he did. We all know he did. Well, that would be way more convincing than these little screenshots up here that I was showing you, right? And I'm going to show you specifically why, but that would be way more convincing. The eyewitness accounts, I'd be like, whoa, okay, well, how can you argue against these 10, 15 people, 30, 40, 50 people in total that stood up and attest to this? Well, let's apply these skeptical questions and see if they hold up. So say I'm skeptical that Chandler wrote it. I'm just a little skeptical here. I'm actually just going to zoom in on it right here. So what do I do with that? Well, I think that Chandler's documents were forged and that someone else could have potentially written it and that he's just edited it and put his name on it. Or, hey, I think maybe even Chandler wrote it genuinely, but that someone else got a hold of it and we don't have the original, so we don't know what the original said. Then we could go about the conversation. We don't actually know who wrote the documents, even though we just showed how compelling the evidence is that Chandler wrote the documents or the script. We don't know when the documents were written. How do we know? We don't know for sure. And they could have really been written kind of any time. And the documents were later manipulated and changed. But again, my only source of evidence is that I'm skeptical. Well, what about all this evidence? Yeah, but like it could have also not happened. You see what I'm saying? Me being skeptical is not evidence. And so here's a great kind of portrayal of this. How do we know we have the original? How do we know when it was written? How do we know who wrote it? Does a picture of the program with Chan's name on it prove that he wrote it? Well, could it be faked? Oh, that's too zoomed in. If you look closely, well, that says what the word father means by Cougar Coburn. Well, what? Well, I mean, come on, guys. Like, I was just sick of Chandler taking credit for what I had written. Does a video on Fehr The Burn prove Chan wrote this? Well, Someone could have messed with the title. Anyone could have put Chandler's name in there. Because I have one that says it's by me. The other screenshot says 88 views. This one has 89 views. So I guess I wrote it. Or I guess more like how everyone approaches it, I guess we'll just never know. We'll never know who wrote it because, look, like there's Cougar. What the word Father means by Cougar Coburn. See? Damn it. But you see, that's kind of like the Gnostic New Testament situation where we're comparing. I mean, this is terrible evidence. If I'm going to say this is proof, right here, you can even see the app that I used that I tried to cut out. This is proof of me writing it. That's way worse. That's a Gnostic gospel. And Chandler's, with all of his evidence, is more like Matthew in this situation. I have no claim. And just because it's like, well, he does technically have this picture right here that says by Cougar Coburn. That's not enough. And that is exactly what we are going to see when we get into these Gnostic gospels and other scriptures, that it's just not enough. It's just not enough. Eyewitnesses is what it's going to be about, okay? And so finally, to wrap this all up nice and in a beautiful little bow, how do we prove this to someone in 2,000 years? I just want to walk this out to show how impossible and insane this is. So if we want to compare Matthew to Chandler, let's take a look at this. How do we preserve the script, what the word Father means? And how do we preserve the fact that Chan wrote it? Well, we need initial preservation, get the best writers of the group, collect the eyewitnesses, and document what's being said. And now I'm going to jump down here and point this out. I'm actually going to bring this up here with me because I want to ask this question. Could one person document 5 eyewitnesses, or would there need to be 5 documents by each eyewitness? That is something that we need to talk about, because if you have 20 people, couldn't technically one person say, oh yeah, there were 20 people that all said Chandler wrote this? If they documented that and it was true, it would be true regardless, right? That would be something that we would need to, there's a conversation to be had there at the very least. But so we're going to document what was being said. And then we need people to copy the original script and make thousands of copies, handmade, handwritten. Then after that, we need to decentralize power and spread these documents across great spans of land among thousands and thousands of people, tens of thousands. And we need every manuscript to agree on 100% of the credited authorship and say that Chandler wrote that play. Then we would need to take these and translate them into new languages. So we need to take those thousands of copies and make tens of thousands of translations into different languages. We'd need all of these to also agree 100% on authorship. Then we need those people in the new languages to make tens of thousands of copies of the translations. And then we'd have to go all the other way to the witnesses of to the script, and we need other people to write about witnessing the script, quoting and alluding to it. We then need these writers to also agree 100% on crediting who authored the script. And we would need these writers to give us an unbroken chain from whoever is presenting this back to the original writer, which is Chandler, which Matthew can be traced back from a Christian believer today back to Matthew. You can have the script and you can take it back to the original source. That's what we would need to be able to do with what the word Father means. In 2,000 years, that is not going to happen. In 2,000 years, no one is going to know who wrote this play. Well, why is that? Because it is like literally almost impossible to do this. Literally almost impossible, okay? And the New Testament does it 27 times on unprecedented amounts. It's crazy. So to wrap it all up here, guys, as I kind of bring this in to a full close here, I just want you to start to understand the standard that we are dealing with when we're saying, well, there's not enough evidence for the Bible. We're going to throw out almost literally everything else because everything else is going to be lacking in terms of evidence. And so we actually probably know more certainty that Matthew wrote Matthew than Chandler wrote what the word Father means. And that's pretty crazy to think about. So this was just to get the ball rolling. I hope it was kind of enlightening and can just be like, wow, that's actually really interesting. I didn't know the Bible was like that. And we're going to be moving on to episodes 2 and 3 here. And the next one's going to be heavy. It's going to be dating and identifying the authors of the Gnostic and New Testament documents. And that's going to get into the specifics of the historical witnesses and the specifics of the manuscript evidence and the preservation that came with that. And we'll get into some specific quotes by the historical witnesses to show what the illusions are, all of it. We want to make these big claims and then back it all up. We don't want to just say things. So thank y'all for watching. Please stay tuned. We got a lot of content coming up. It's going to be a few weeks before I'm back dropping this next big one, and Chandler is going to be posting his stuff. We'll be doing some more work together as well, and this is the road to 100 episodes. Y'all, if you made it this far, rad. I know you watched through all the way, man. It's 3 a.m. right now as I'm recording this, and I just wanted to shout out all the burners that have listened all the way through, and I love you guys. Shout out Jesus Christ, who died and rose for our sins. We needed the coverage of the blood of Jesus Christ for the sins that we have committed. Sin is real. Don't let me start preaching now on y'all. But first, I thank my God through Jesus Christ, and we'll see you on episode 2, y'all. Love you guys.
There is none righteous, no, not one. There is none that doeth good, no, there is none. Destruction and misery is what we were in, but through faith in His blood, we have the remission of sins.